Now, if you've watched the channel for a while, you will know that I love using products by SweetStamp on my cakes. And they have recently released a whole new collection of OutBoss stamps and Stampin' Cup cutters. Now, these are perfect to add text and designs onto cupcakes, to make cake toppers, to add little messages on the top of bento cakes, and they are also great for creating decorations for the top of cookies. So I thought it would be really fun in this week's video to take a look at their new collection, make some sugar cookies, and show you how to use the OutBoss stamps. Okay, let's get started. So first of all, let's take a look inside the box at the new collection. So all of these bits are either wedding, engagement, or hen party themed, and it just makes them so perfect for this time of year. First of all, we've got some OutBoss stamps. So we've got We're Engaged, we've got Maid of Honor, so you could also use these as place settings or little gifts. We've got this cute little one that says Future Wifey. We've got Bridesmaid and Mother of the Bride. We've also got these really sweet, we've got a bride and a bridesmaid there. We've got a fun little bride. We've got Will You Be My Bridesmaid and a bride to be. We've then got the Stampin' Cups. So this one I love, and you could use this for so many different themes, not just weddings. So we've got 3 different size bows. So we've got the cutters and the embossing stamps. We've got a sweet little wedding cake. One of my favorites, we've got a diamond ring, and this one which is a diamond ring in a ring box. And this is just part of the new collection. Now, I do actually have a 10% off discount code across everything on the SweetStamp website. All you have to do is enter Cakes by Linz at the checkout, and I will put all the details to this in the description below. So the first thing we need to do is make our sugar cookie dough. So I'm going to be using my hand whisk for this, but you can also use a stand mixer. So I'm going to pop 200 grams of room temperature butter into my mixing bowl. Now, one thing you want to make sure is that you're using real butter and not a spread. The reason for this is we will be putting our sugar cookie dough, once we've cut them out, back into the fridge to allow the butter in our dough to firm up again. This means that when we pop them in the oven, that butter is nice and cold and that cookie will keep its shape and stop spreading. To this, I'm going to add 200 grams of caster sugar, and I'm just going to cream those together until we've got a nice fluffy mixture. Now, I always like to use salted butter, but if you did want to use unsalted, you want to add just a small pinch of salt. Now, once that's gone nice and creamy, I'm going to add in 1 medium egg, 1 teaspoon of vanilla flavouring. I'm just going to mix that through. You then want to add 360 grams of plain flour. Now, I'm going to add this really slowly, just add in 1 tablespoon at a time, and this is going to allow that flour to absorb some of that butter. We want to add in all of that flour and just keep mixing until we've formed a dough that's clinging together. Now, once all of that flour has been added, you'll start to see that that dough is starting to cling together. So I'm going to scrape all of that out, and we've now got a ball of dough for our sugar cookies. Now, to prepare our sugar cookies, first of all, you're going to need a cookie tray or a baking tray, and I've just added on some parchment paper. I've got a small amount of plain flour for dusting, along with my rolling pin. I've then got my Stampin' Cups and also some round cookie cutters. Now, if we take out one of those Stampin' Cut sets, so this is the diamond ring. First of all, you've got this one, which on the back has the diamond ring engraved in there, and we'll be using this one along with some fondant to make our design to go on the top of our cookie. We've then got the cookie cutter, so this is what we'll need to cut out our shapes. Now, this one I love is small little bows, so we've got 3 cookie cutters and then our stamp. Now, as well as those Stampin' Cuts, we also had the OutBoss stamps. Now, these don't actually come with cookie cutters, so what I'm going to use is my circle cutters, and I can put that over the top and just check that it's going to be big enough for that design. I'm going to add down a small amount of flour before rolling it out my cookie dough, and I want this to be a thickness of around 5 millimeters. You can then use those cutters to cut out the dough, and I'm going to carefully transfer these shapes over onto my cookie tray. Now this recipe is going to make around 20 to 25 of the larger size sugar cookies. Now once all of your sugar cookies have been cut out, I'm going to pop this in the fridge for at least half an hour, and this is just going to firm up that butter in our sugar cookies. I can then pop these into a preheated oven, which is at 180 degrees Celsius for around 8 to 10 minutes. We just want the edges of our sugar cookies just to start going a nice golden color. Okay, so now we've got our sugar cookies, I'm going to create some designs to go on the top, and I'm going to start with the OutBoss stamps. Now the way that an OutBoss stamp works is if we flip that over, you can see that the back of the stamp just has the design engraved into the acrylic. So what we want to do is push our fondant into that so it creates a raised effect. I've got this really pretty pink colour fondant I've created. Now in order to get this pink colour, which is similar to a kind of rose gold, I used some of the pink SweetStamp food gel. I added in a really teeny amount of the navy blue and a small amount of the yellow. We're going to prepare the OutBoss stamp. So for this you're going to need some corn flour, and this is going to stop your fondant sticking. Add some corn flour into there and just using a really large fluffy brush, and just tap out any excess. I'm then going to roll out my fondant, and you want this to be slightly thicker than you want your end piece to be. So I've rolled this out to about 5 millimeters. Now you can place your OutBoss stamp over the top and just roll over, but I find in order to really push that fondant in and get a really nice raised effect, I like to place my OutBoss stamp down and actually do it the opposite way. So I'm going to lay my fondant over the top with the front facing down, and I'm going to use my rolling pin and just really push into that. So we're pushing that fondant into that engraved text. I can then carefully peel that off, and there we have the design. I can then take my cookie cutter and just cut that out. So that is now ready to use on the top of your cookie, but maybe you want to make that text really stand out. So one thing we can do is paint it. And for this we have some different options. So you could use some edible paint. So this is just an edible white paint, or you could use some luster dust. You just want to use a really thin paintbrush, and this is one of the ones from the SweetStamp sets. And just carefully run that over the top of that text. And this is just a super easy way to just make that text stand out. Now for the second technique, I'm actually going to show you with the Stampin' Cuts. Now if we look at this part, this is actually exactly the same as the OutBoss stamps. So we have this design engraved in the back. The difference with these is these are slightly chunkier. Now I've got my pink fondant and I've also got some white. So what we're going to do is add our colour into our shape so that when we push the fondant onto the stamp, there's going to be no need for painting. Now one thing you do want to do is just really knead that fondant just to warm it up slightly, because we will need the two pieces of fondant to connect. I've also found that using a fondant that doesn't have much stretch to it works really well, as when you're releasing it, that fondant doesn't stretch with the stamp. So this is just a fondant from the supermarket. Now I'm going to add in some corn flour and just push that in with my brush, just making sure that that fondant will release. Now I've actually got this little scraper tool which came with one of the SweetStamp letter sets, but you could just use a smoothing tool, either a metal one or an acrylic one that you use to spread buttercream around the side of your cakes. Now I'm adding some of that fondant onto that stamp, and I'm just using that scraper to pull it off. So using it kind of like a mold. One thing you do want to make sure that you're doing is you want to lay that scraper down as much as you can, as if it's turned up, it can pull the fondant out as you're doing this. So you just want to scrape off any excess. So as you can see, we've just got a bit too much fondant there. I'm going to roll out that pink fondant again, slightly thicker than I need. So again, I'm going to lay that down. I just want to roll over so that that connects. And when I release that off, there we have our diamond ring. And then we have our diamond ring, which doesn't need any painting unless you wanted to. Now, one thing I would say is this effect works so well on the Stampin' Cuts because they are quite chunky. Some of those OutBoss stamps that have really fine lettering, it can be quite hard for the two pieces of fondant to connect. So if you did want to use this method, I would try and find one that has nice chunky lettering, as that will work really well. Now, one thing that I love is combining the OutBoss stamps with some customization. So here I've got one of the SweetStamp letter sets. So this is the timeless set. I'm gonna pick out some of those letters. So if you were using these for wedding favors or maybe for cookies at an engagement party, you could add on the initials of the couple. And I'm gonna push those in with a little mini pickup pad. Now for this one, I'm going to use some luster dust. So I've got some pure gold luster dust, and these are just the luster dusts by Sweet Sticks. And this is a great alternative to that edible paint, as it just adds a bit of shimmer. So I'm adding in some dipping solution just to create a paint. And just as I did before, I'm just using a small brush just to run over the top, just so it picks up that colour. So where I've embossed using that timeless letter set, I'm just going to go in with that really tiny brush and just carefully fill in those letters. So I've got my cookie and I've got my design to go on top. So in order to stick the fondant onto the cookie, I'm just going to use some edible glue, just enough to stick it down. Just move that into position, and there we have our cookie. Now, as these are wedding themed, I'm going to finish them off with some cute little flowers. To create some little flowers, I've just got a small amount of light pink fondant, and I'm going to roll this out into a long thin strip. And these are just going to be really simple cartoony roses. I'm going to cut off some really thin strips. And I'm going to take that and just start to wind it round to create a little bud, and then keep wrapping it round, but just try and ruffle it as I go. I'm then going to just pull it down at the side and trim it off, just to give me this really cute, quick little cartoony rose. And I'm going to do a few of those, each of my cookies. For the leaves, I've just got a really small amount of leaf green fondant. So I'm just going to take really small balls and just taper them off on one side. Push that down, and then just use my dresden tool just to draw a line up the center, just to give me a tiny little leaf. So I'm going to make a few of these for each cookie. So I've created some of those roses in a slightly darker pink, I've got a light pink, and I've got my leaves. So I'm just going to use some edible glue just on the edges and just add in some of those little leaves. So we've got these really sweet cookies with this beautiful text across the front. And I've also created some mini cookies with those really pretty bow Stampin' Cuts. And these just go so well with the larger cookies. I really hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial and will be able to use some of the techniques in this video to make your own cookies, or even use the OutBoss stamps for your cakes, your cupcakes, or to add little messages on the top of your bento cakes. Now, don't forget, you can get 10% off all of the SweetStamp products that I've used in today's video just by using my code CakesByLinz at the checkout on their website. And I will put links in the description below to all the tools that I've used throughout today's video. Now, if you have enjoyed the video, please don't forget to give it a like, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to the Cakes by Linz YouTube channel. So until next time, bye!